So, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical New Beginnings podcast. I am super delighted to introduce my lovely friend, Becky Walsh. Becky, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's been years. It's so nice to see your face. I love it. Thank you.
I know. We had so much fun together when we were we did a workshop together with David Hamilton, and that was really good fun, wasn't it?
It was really good fun, and then all sorts of different things. I was casting my mind back over that actually, but yeah, we won't bore everyone with our reminiscing. But yes, we've had a lot going on.
We certainly have. So, Becky, for anybody who doesn't know who you are, would you like to just give us a brief synopsis on your achievements, your magicalness?
Yeah. Why should you listen to this? Okay, well, firstly, I have written several books, mostly on the subject of intuition. The most popular being You Do Know, Learning to Act on Intuition Instantly, which was published by Hay House. I went from personal development into developing communities by working for local town and parish councils. So that's a bit of a leap, but I guess, from going to one-to-one work to that. And then I think a lot of that is around like building communities and people feeling included. So that's what I've been working on. And I'm currently training to be a counsellor. So talking about new beginnings, not a counsellor, but because they don't have any training, they just jump in as volunteers. But actual counselling is the therapeutic models of that.
Yes, you've always been very interested in the self-help world.
Yeah, and I kind of went from being a quite famous psychic to then studying neuroscience and actually working out that psychic ability was on a spectrum of neurodivergence, and actually being able to pull together where that sat. So the only word we had back in the day was psychic. We didn't have like neurodivergent, and now we've got neurodivergent, and we can actually say high levels of intuition are actually a form of neurodiversity. And so it's actually to be celebrated rather than, oh, I think you're a fake, you're a liar. And I also think it's created by hypervigilance. So depending on what you went through, as you would know, what you went through in the womb. So all of that hypervigilance stuff as well is that eyes in the back of your head. So I cut my teeth as a psychic. I trained at the College of Psychic Studies. I taught there. I was called a brazen cow by Darren Brown. I mean, I got that famous. I could get into taxis and people would know my name. You know what I mean? So so I had a radio show on LBC. And then I went from that and I moved to America and decided to study everything I could on neuroscience to actually be able to understand what was going on with the brain as to why some people had this really strong intuitive ability and some people didn't. So that's when I wrote You Do Know, which is pulling together some of that stuff. And obviously with any book, you learn way more that you wish you'd put in the book afterwards. But I then went from psychic to life coach because it was just the easiest thing to do. I called it intuitive catalyst because I hate getting a client stuck in a series of 6 blah 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 months worth of rubbish. And now I'm training to be a counsellor because the way the world is at the moment, we need to do the deeper work. And I just was doing the deeper work without the qualification of the deeper work. And now I've got getting the qualification within a year of the, not within a year, I've been studying it forever, but to do the deeper work because it needs doing.
It certainly does. It certainly does. And the times that we're in at the moment, there's going to be a lot of traumatized people.
Huge amounts.
Coming through.
Yeah, and being like uber positive, like being oh, well, you've got to have a positive mindset. It's like actually no. You've got to be authentic and real and true to who you are and actually what has gone on with you. Otherwise you're going to be just smashed against the rocks. If you don't have a really good understanding of yourself, you are going to be swayed by every piece of absolute nonsense that there's out there and available for you to buy into.
Absolutely. The program is deep. The program is deep. As is the work that we need to do to get out of the programs.
Yeah, big time.
One of your other talents is comedy.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, so I do a mix of personal development subjects and mix that with comedy. So it started off doing like psychic comedy readings on an audience, so not like the people who you might go and see a medium and most of the audience leave disappointed because the dead people didn't turn up. But it's I started off doing that, and now I do a show called Burnout, which is a comedy show about emotional exhaustion, and another one called Toss Bag, which is a comedy show about challenging people. people. So yeah, so that's quite fun. I can feel a third show coming, but I just need to sit down with a bit of space, pen and paper, and see what starts to develop. But yeah, I've started touring that in different places, and it's going down really well. I'm selling out because I think, again, a bit like what we're saying, I'm selling out because people just go, I need this. And
Yes.
if they don't think they need it, they pull along someone who would not be seen dead on a chaise long psychiatrist couch. So they bring along people who are struggling with work bullying. And yeah, so Tossback isn't just about having a good old moan and a laugh, but it's also about the skills that you need to be able to be resilient in a world that was not set up for what it is to be human.
Mm. Mm. Do you want to talk a little bit more about this world that's not set up to be human?
So I work in local government. And one of the things about public sector is the fact that you've got, I mean, it's quite crazy, really. Public sector is set up in, let's just talk about councils because it's probably the easiest thing I can talk about. So with councils, you have a group of volunteers that are elected members that come in and they are given a task, which is to keep councils accountable. And so in any other role or job or thing where you joined an organisation, can you imagine in the interview if they said, really want to join the organisation, really passionate about the community, really feel that I want to make this town a much better place, and you people suck, and I am here to tell you how rubbish you are, and I'm going to be on at you and on at you and on at you until you get better at your job, and then wonder why town and parish clerks crack. And often town and parish clerks are just their own, they're just one person. There's not like, town councils are usually a lot bigger, but the smaller ones are usually just one person. And also the types of people that are attracted into governance have usually got lots of stuff that they haven't dealt with in their childhood themselves. And that's before we start looking at the spectrum and the likelihood, especially around government, of psychopaths and narcissists and people who are in the dark triad wanting to get into those roles because it's fun, isn't it? Really, it's fun. So that's a huge amount to unpack for a bunch of people that really are people pleasers. They're the kinds of people that were usually the parents of their parent. They go into local government in order to make the world a better place because they believe that they can be of service, and they are battered. And so I think that the way in which we actually set up our governance and therefore our communities, because this has a huge knock on to the community and also the narrative, especially in the UK, we still have the Robin Hood narrative of we've got to fight the oppressors with gas. And then when you see them, Margaret, who works in accounts, is not an oppressor. She's doing the best she can. She's, you've got the grounds team who are, painting benches and putting out really nice stuff, and they're putting out play equipment, and only to find they come back the next day and someone set fire to it. There's so much pressure that's on at the moment that right the way from the kids that are burning the play equipment or smashing the stuff up or writing graffiti or all of the stuff that they're doing because they're not being taken care of. So really when you are in a place of like looking at councils, you really understand like the vast amount of pain that people are in, and how that is being lashed out against each other in particular ways. So we're at the coalface really, but not supported by the community, not necessarily supported by the councillors, although once they're on the inside, they usually concede the lack of budget. And the constant onslaught from social media keyboard warriors. It's a really hard thing. So then the only people who end up sticking at it are the ones who go, computer says no. And then you kind of go, why is it that all council workers are like this? Well, because they were the ones that stuck at the job because they didn't care.
Yes.
And the ones that do care don't stick at the job very long without hitting burnout. So we really need to change this, and that's why I'm hanging in there. Like I've just got a vision of myself with a dog with a massive stick that won't let it go, and I'm hanging by my own body and my own teeth, and I'm just sticking in it because I am going to change it from the inside.
So where did this tenacity come from? Where did this strength come from?
Well, I think a lot of this is quite interesting. I've been really reflective, and one of the things about doing a counselling course is the fact that you have to be counselled, and God, it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. uncomfortable. And I think when they call it doing the work, it really is doing the work. But I'd started the counselling journey and started unpacking that. And in the middle of unpacking that, really, the college said, "Oh, I think you," which is no shock to anyone, but they were like, "I think that you've got ADHD that but is kind of being masked by mild autism." I'm like, "Yeah, and do you want to add to that like dyslexia and you know, and so dyscalculia and I think all of these are, you know, as interesting as they are, I think that the more we start to look at, and Gabrielle Matto talks about this, about what was going on in the womb at the time, what was going on in your personal development as you were growing up. And one of my friends said, "Oh, I've just done a DNA test with 43andMe to find out if I've got ADHD, and it says I may be prone to ADHD." I was like, "What utter nonsense is that?" So in order to disprove it, I decided to go and get a DNA test, and I went with the 43andMe, and I was doing it on my phone without my glasses, and it's really difficult that. And so I got the test through, spat in the vial, sent it off, and it actually linked me up to Ancestry app, which tells you who your relatives are. And I'm like, "Oh, that's quite interesting. I thought I was Irish. I've got a surname Walsh, but this hasn't come back with very many links to Ireland." And then about 8 months later, I get a phone call from a girl telling me she's my sister. And it turns out the person I thought was my dad isn't my dad. And so very interesting conversations needed to be had with various members of the family, because then you're like, "Oh, so you're not my grandmother, you're not my cousins, okay, and people will say to you things like, "Doesn't change who people are," you know. So the brother I grew up with is a half brother. There's a lot of unpacking. I've got a dad who's alive, who's amazing. I've got a brother and a sister, and they've got like kids. One of them's grown up, but suddenly there's this whole new beginning. There's this whole new life. There's this whole thing that happens. But what it actually does, and you know, I've had the pleasure of sort of talking to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and so have you, and interviewing him about those neuro pathways. Your brain goes, right, this is who you are. So you're whatever it is, you're Irish, you got a bit of this, you got a bit of that, you know, this is who your dad is, all of these roles and who you are. And no matter what anyone says about like it doesn't change your childhood, you have to rewrite everything that you've ever known about yourself, which means that you actually have to construct completely new neural pathways and change the neural pathways that are hardwired. And what it feels like is an constant earthquake going off. So everything that you thought had a place, you know, so I like playing with pens. So you kind of like go, the pen was there, the pen isn't there, the pen isn't there, the pen isn't there. Where is that? Because it's not just everything's on the floor, it's like everything's in the air. So all of these things are really, you know, you're trying to restructure everything, and at the same time you trust nothing, like nothing has any foundation or solidity or grip anymore. And honestly, if I hadn't gone through this and I was listening to somebody talk about it, I'd be like, "Oh my God, like, no, just look at the positive. Like, you've got a new dad, your other dad's dead, so you don't have to have a difficult conversation. You didn't have a great relationship with them anyway. What does it matter? You've got a whole new family. This is amazing." And it is, and that all of that is true. And what is true is that your brain needs to rewire and it needs to reconnect with itself, and it is really uncomfortable. And also during this time, somebody who I was in a relationship with, who I trusted very deeply, who I'd known for years before we got together in the relationship, turned out he wasn't being particularly authentic or real about his relationship status. So I found that out at the same time, and that was like the biggest, wettest. I mean, once you're wet, you're wet. But this was like a tsunami hitting me in the middle of all of that. And I got floored. I've never been floored in my life. I've never been floored by anything. And it wasn't so much, I mean, I've had stuff like that happen with blokes before, but this floored me and I couldn't get up. I just don't even know. I don't know what happened, but it was like my brain just went, right, we're done. And luckily with having counselling, I mean, my counsellor she said, "You are literally burning up." She said, "You're burning up. Firstly, you're trying to fix yourself too quickly," because I was diving into, I'm a researcher. I was diving into everything I could possibly find, and I was burning my brain out because it couldn't handle the research, which was too fast for the neuropathways trying to reform themselves.
Mhm.
And it's been 6 months since I had that. I want to say diagnosis of a new family, but it's been 6 months since that happened. Yeah, but that's what it feels like. Diagnosis of a new family. You've got a new family. This might take a while, you know.
Yes, you're not who you think you are.
You know who
You've
you think
got
you are. Oh my
totally
God.
different genes.
There was this moment, right? I was hosting a massive conference soon after this had happened, and I'm standing in the queue, and I'm celiac, so also as well trying to get food at a conference is also quite difficult. So I had two different types of potato. I had mashed potato and I had half a jacket spud, and the woman behind me in the queue goes, "Typical Irish." I said, "I'm not Irish, first time." And she said, "But your surname's Walsh." And I went, "That's not my surname." And then she went, "What's your surname?" The first time I said it, I said, "It's Alliston." And she went, "Oh." And I went, "Oh." And I put the potato down. I went and hid in a room. And I just hid. And I was like, my God. And I had to go on stage 10 minutes later in front of 500 people and be funny. You know, these things, like, and you manage it and you cope and you can do all of this stuff, but epic.
Well, it's like you've had trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, and then you're asked to go out and do what you normally do and be funny and, like give to a whole, like afterwards you must, is that when you crashed and burned after that? Because that would
Yeah,
have
I think
taken a lot of energy.
it took a lot, it took a lot of energy. And I think also there's certain things that become kind of apparent about who you've been. And I would never describe myself as a people pleaser, but I've always gone, uh, I implement boundaries. I tell people, but I don't police them. So I, there's like a pendulum that happens, and I actually tell this to clients. Whatever happens when you're changing, you will go like, those kind of things that go click, click, click. It's like you will go too far the other way. So whenever you're changing, you'll always go too far the other way. So if you need to put in boundaries, you become aggressive. Like if you need to, if you need to say no, you'll say it too harshly. Like that's what will happen. But when you're going through that level of change, people around you get very scared, and weirdly they abandon. Well, I say weirdly, I guess it's just human nature, but they abandon. They just go. Very few people stick around when you're going through that level of change, mainly because they just don't know who you are. And so when you're sort of putting in boundaries, or because you have to put in boundaries when you're on the floor and you're going through trauma. If you still try and be your happy-go-lucky, entertaining person, if you're not being authentic to exactly where you're at, then you're just going to elongate. Well, I would say you could miswire. You could wire yourself up the wrong way. And so in the undoing of all of your wiring, there is almost like a realization that you have no identity. And when you have no identity, people just stay clear of you because they don't know you, because also you're not responding normally. So whereas people can anticipate what you're going to say, or anticipate your mood, or anticipate who you are, not even you can anticipate it. So they don't know what to do. And that's really tricky. So I mean, I remember, sitting quite actually only about a month ago, sitting in a pub with a friend and a friend of a friend, and she said something about something, and I suddenly just burst into tears, couldn't handle the situation, had to leave. Never done that in my life before, but then that can be a thing. And then you end up sending an apology text the next day or whatever, just sort of saying, look, you didn't do or say anything, but you just touched on something, and I have a normal response for that, or I have a joke that goes with that, and there was nothing, and I couldn't, there was nothing, and so I left because that's the only thing to do, because you said something and it triggered me. So even triggers you respond to differently. It's the weirdest thing.
It's just bringing back memories for me, actually. When I was 26, I met a man and we fell in love and big romance. And then he stupidly went off and got himself shot and killed.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, you remember me saying about Mark. And I remember afterwards, I had a very good friend who was very intuitive, and she did tarot cards, and she was very supportive up to a point. And the thing is with this guy, the Mark, that I fell in love with, he actually was in the SAS, the Special Forces. He went off on a training trip, and that's where he was accidentally shot and killed. Complete accident, wasn't, you know, a wartime thing. But it was, I don't know, about 3 months later that me and my friend and another friend, we went to the cinema to see The Bodyguard. Whitney Houston, remember
Yeah,
Bodyguard?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
And I don't remember the ending, but does he die at the end trying to protect her or something? I can't remember
yeah.
now, but I remember sitting in that audience, right, going, and he even, like, my partner at that was killed, he even looked a little bit like Kevin Costner, and he
Oh,
did bodyguarding in his spare time. So there was just so many triggers coming at me through that film, and at the end I was like, I just wanted to scream and howl with tears because I was still
yeah,
grieving at the loss of my
yeah,
future, of him. I still had the shock running through my body because I hadn't known how to deal with it. And I got up and I ran out of the cinema because I didn't want to be stuck going down the stairs with everybody. And I went
yeah.
back and sat by my car because I was driving and waited for my two friends.
Oh,
My friend, she walked up to me and she screamed at me, like, why the hell did you run off like that? We were worried about you. And like, there I am, just like reliving the trauma of losing that. And now she's adding to it by screaming at me, going, I don't understand. It's been 3 months. You should be over this by now. So
mm,
people don't, who have never experienced that level of trauma, they don't understand. They don't get it. They don't, they don't.
no,
And you
no,
are a different person. You know, I
yeah.
wasn't my usual happy-go-lucky Sharon. I was this person who burst into tears at the drop of a hat. So I totally get it.
And it's the sense of being a disappointment.
Yes.
You
And
know, you're a
wrong.
disappointment, you're wrong. What, you know, you're not dealing with this particularly well. And also you do it to yourself. You do that to yourself because you sort of like go, oh, why don't you just adopt an attitude of gratitude? Because this is great, you know, this is wonderful. Like, and people ask you, well, were you excited? Da, 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 da. And you're like, I can't even begin to tell you. And also, you know, that's where you are with that. Like, that's such a fundamental time period in your 20s.
Yes.
And it's going to just create the map of the way that you see the world, you know, and all of your future relationships and everything else that kind of like comes off the back of that kind of thing. And I think that this is also a similar thing of, you know, the dad I grew up with, I'll give you a really quick story, but this kind of like really sums him up completely. There was a country dancing thing at the school, and he said he was going to come, but he never came to anything, so I didn't really believe him. And so it said, "Oh, we're going to do the," and I kept looking for him, couldn't see him. We're going to do the daddy-daughter dance. Great. So go and find your dad. So I'm looking for him everywhere. I look everywhere. I cannot see him. So I sit it out. And when I get home, and I'm 7 at the time, he absolutely loses it with me for the fact that I didn't look hard enough. I watched you look for me, but you didn't look hard enough. Can you imagine how humiliated I felt when the teachers were coming over, giving me other little girls to dance with, and you didn't look for me? I mean, I was like, and just even then, I remember just that capacity to go into this numbness and just go into my bedroom.
Yeah.
So I was really good at sort of switching off. So now I've got a dad who says things to me like, "You're so intelligent. I am so proud of you. I love you so much. You are the missing link in my family. You are the jigsaw piece there, you know, all of this stuff." And you are suddenly being given something that you didn't have. There's nothing that could have been done. You got the life you had, you're on the path you're on. And again, there comes the gratitude. I am grateful for who I am, and these all things are great, but there is an adjustment that needs to come with, I am now a loved child. Inside, I have a dad who loves me. And my inner child is going, no, you don't. And I'm
Yes.
like, yes, I do. There's also stories about my grandmother, and my sister burst into tears when we first met at some point in the proceedings and went, God, you just look so much like Gran. And all of those things, like my grandmother's life is just extreme. And I always thought, you know, oh, it's about who the womb you're in, that it's not really about sperm, but all of these things are the bits and pieces that you have to unwrap as you're reinventing who you are. And I imagine that what you went through, there will have been a reinventing of yourself, but it's and I don't know how anyone can support you. And I'm really grateful that I've been in therapy while I've been going through this. Really grateful, because there is somebody who actually can hold the space. It's like, and also I don't have to feel guilty because I'm paying her. So that's really good. So I've literally cried throughout one session before. I did manage to do some kind of verbal things, but but it's how do we rebuild trust in the world?
Yes.
It's that, when your friend's shouting at you and the trust is, friendly fire, how do you build trust in the world? And I think it comes down to that the thing that I've kind of been left with is courageous trust. I can't have ordinary trust anymore. I don't have ordinary trust. I don't trust. I have courageous trust, and courageous trust comes from a trust in myself. I have courageous trust. I have the courage to believe that I will continue to trust as an act of revolution, as an act of aggression. I am going to trust. I am going to
Strength
do that.
and
Yeah,
courage.
yeah. It's because there isn't any other way forward. Because the only thing that could do when the tsunami hit and I'm laid on the floor is I can either choose to stay a victim and never trust anyone again and become very socially isolated and withdraw, because that started to happen. So I can become totally isolated, withdraw, not trust, and stay safe within my own surroundings, but utterly unsafe because that loneliness will kill me slowly. Or I can decide that I'm going to go out and trust courageously. And that's where it's left me, is that. But at the same time, allowing myself to feel all of the feels of sadness. Like, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night with such a sense of grief and sadness, and I just lay there and just go, okay, well, you don't have to do anything else right now. No one's going to call you and interrupt this. You're not going to have your phone voice on. You're just going to have to sit here and be in the mud and just allow that to feel like that and sit with it. And it's aggravating because I want quick fixes, but I don't think it's going to fix quickly.
Not only do you want a quick fix, but you don't want to go through that level of pain and that emotion. And none of us do. None of us do. What I love about Dr. Joe Dispenza's work is that he teaches you or trains you to be okay in the unknown.
And it's hard because we're seekers.
It's not safe. It's not safe not to know.
No, seekers of truth.
Yes.
But there is no truth. There isn't a truth. There's just, even when we look at old history books, none of it's got the truth in it. There isn't any real truth. There's just kind of like just being okay with what is.
Yeah.
That's my neighbour's dog. My one's fast asleep down here.
Well, my cat's just popped up and gone again.
It's keeping it real.
I know, we've got to have our animals around us. So Becky, let's talk about the genes, epigenetic side of things. There you are growing in utero, and you're actually like, you've got Peter's sperm rather than your stepdad's sperm. So what have you discovered about the nature nurture?
Oh God, it's huge. Well, one of the first things was my sister said, "Oh, in the bombshell," she said, "Oh, and there's a hereditary disease which you've probably got." So it's
oh no, just put another knife in.
sort of like, okay. So actually didn't mean to do this at all, but so then and it's polycystic kidney disease. So then I had to go and get my kidneys sorted out, like checked. And I kept going, Bruce Lipton's work, epigenetics, Bruce Lipton's work. You might not have it, you might not have it. And I don't have it. And I think that whole thing about what is genes or what is environment, what is your nurture, how you were brought up, I think all of that stuff is really fascinating. And I'm in a privileged position in this as well, because my mother had given away a baby boy to adoption, her first child. So we got back in touch with him. So I'd already gone through the, oh, you've got ears like my uncle, and oh, you've got, and it's really funny because having had that just happen to me, I immediately apologized to him. I said, I am so sorry. It's like being kind of like, like a laboratory animal. Like everyone's kind of like looking at you like, oh, look, you've got your aunties this. And I said, I'm so sorry I did that to you. Now I've had it done. And but so I'd already sort of seen lots of traits in him that felt very familiar to my mum's side of the family. But with this has been completely different because there's more of them. And there's certain things, there's a tenacity that my grandmother had. So my grandmother's story is quite interesting, which is her dad left. There was three of them, and at this point of time they were advertised for sale. There wasn't like adoption, and she was picked up by an abuser, and she joined the army very young to go to war at the age of 14 because she lied about her age.
To
So
escape.
to escape, she comes back, works for a corner shop, then takes over the lease, then buys it, and basically starts being an entrepreneur and ends up with all of these different businesses, which is really quite cool. But there's one story that my dad told me about the fact that somebody had said something about her, and in the butcher's, and she stropped over to the butcher's from her shop, picked up the butcher's knife, went, right, I'm telling you now, and I was kind of like, my mum has always said, oh, you were always intimidating as a child. I was always intimidated by you. And it's that part of me that has that in me, that, I mean, not the someone, not kind of that level, although if pushed,
Yes.
but the sort of the strength of character and the confidence and the like my other stepdad, who was not the one I grew up with thinking was my father, he said, oh, he goes, you're like a natural born saleswoman, you are. I said, you're not like, your brother will, you're not like, you're natural born saleswoman. Well, my dad was a salesman. So you just kind of go, there's all of these things, and how he looks, and my sister's boyfriend at the time, they've since broken up, but he just said, oh my God, you're totally an Alliston. And what was weird about this was their first kind of connection of me was watching my films on YouTube. So they were looking at all the stuff I'd created on YouTube and just going, oh, look at her nose. So I kind of think I used to really not rate it that much, but and I'll be absolutely honest, Sharon, I couldn't understand family. When people go, oh, but it's family, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I can feel what family is now. I can feel family. I can see family. I can feel what it feels like to belong to a tribe of people. And there's one point when we went out for dinner, and I'm chatting away, me, clearly chatting away. And I just glanced at my dad, who was just beaming. I mean, it was like the sun was coming out of him. He was beaming. And I reached across the table and took his hand. But in this moment, I could see that what was happening for him was everybody was here. This is his clan. These are his people. These are his kids, his grandkids. They're all here. And this is him, the head of the table with all of his family without anyone missing. And I could see in his face, he felt complete.
Yes.
And I'm sure that there's people listening to this that kind of like think, that have a child that's somewhere else or all the rest of it and thinks maybe I don't want to get in touch, or, or they got someone knocked up and they're too scared to get in touch with them or whatever. But I can't tell you how that connecting of all of the parts that were sitting together, eating food, all talking at once, because we've got that in common. We don't breathe and talk at the same time. So everybody, and just the look on his face, absolutely priceless, completely priceless.
So how long ago was it that you discovered this? Wasn't
January.
that long ago. So
Yeah, January, and we're now in July.
yeah.
So yeah, not that long ago. And it took 2 weeks before my sister came to see me. It took 2 months before I saw my dad. I think about 2 months, yeah, from my sister going back. So probably about 3 months altogether. But yeah, I've seen them twice now, and I'm now going to go and spend a month up there and actually kind of like get embedded into having this family. Because I think when you go up and visit for a weekend, we're all still on best behaviour.
Yes.
You want to get to the point where somebody's grumpy, hungry, or tired.
Exactly.
And then it'd be like, oh my God, I'm not coming up here again.
Then you really become one of the family because everybody's just hanging loose and being
Yeah,
natural and
completely.
their normal self.
Yeah. And we've kind of already got like that in lots of ways. My dad said something profoundly inappropriate, which was brilliant because it's the sort of thing I'd come out with. And my brother went stiff, and my dad suddenly realized what he'd said, and I upgraded it.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
And then they just killed themselves laughing. And my brother goes, "Oh, yeah, she's definitely yours." Oh, brilliant. It's so fun. It's just so fun. It's a really nice place to be when you start to kind of everything's back in place and the dust has settled, and then you just kind of go, right, okay, so um my journeys have always been external journeys. I've always been, where can I go in the world? What can I experience? What can I eat? What can I sleep with? What can I, like, what can I, just an experienced consumer. I've been wanting to experience things. I think I just hadn't actually spent any time experiencing me.
Yes.
And I think that this has given me the opportunity to really, I don't think the right word is reflect, but to really kind of go, all right, so you know who you are to everyone else. And this is also something that a lot of people who mask trauma, or neurodivergence in any way, you mask. And so you learn to adapt to what other people need you to be. So you could call it people pleasing, but you adapt to what other people need you to be. And that becomes who you are. You become a self that is a chameleon that can blend into any environment, disappear in any environment, be the life and soul of any environment, but you know how to work with people, you know how to do that. And then there's that question of, who are you inside of here?
Yeah.
And in Gabor Mate's book, Scattered Minds, he describes it perfectly. He says, there isn't anything inside of here. It's not that you don't know who you are. It actually doesn't exist. And it was a real relief to hear that, because I kind of thought, oh, you just need to reveal who you are. You're in there. Like the idea of, the sculptor just chips away at the stone until the angel reveals itself. It isn't there, because you've done everything on the external. And I know people who are listening to this going, nonsense, you can't, your moral values, your soul is always there. But who you are in terms of, I don't know, knowing where your boundaries are, where are your edges, where are your hard edges, where are your soft edges, what will you put up with, what won't you put up with? And the big freaking question, which I never had, was, what are your needs? Because I never had any needs. I've never needed anything from anybody ever at any point in time. And then therefore I've never been able to stay in relationships because I didn't have any needs. I didn't have any boundaries. I didn't have any hard edges. And so people would just go, push. Oh, that's interesting. I can do a bit more of that. Push. I'll do a bit more of that. Push. I'll do a bit more of that. Oh, now I feel guilty because now I've pushed out of my own moral judgment and she's still taking it. I can't be with her anymore. Or eventually I would go, you can go, and you can go, because I've done everything and it still isn't working. I still can't make you love me. And I've done everything to make you love me. I still can't make you love me, only to find that what makes someone love you is the authenticity of hard edges, is the no, is the, I'm not putting up with that, is the, I need you to do that. I want this from you. I need. And unless you are really, that's what this is made up of, because it's your heart. It's you, when you give someone your heart, you're not giving, I always used to think, oh, I give someone my heart and I'm giving them, you know, all my care, love and attention and service. That's giving them my needs. I'm giving them my needs. I'm saying, you can take care of me. This is what I need. This is my heart. These are my needs. And I didn't have any. So I didn't have a heart. It wasn't fully complete. That sounds really tragic. I'm saying it out loud and kind of going, wow. But that's exactly how it is. And so once you start to rebuild that with needs, then you can actually have a decent conversation that is balanced with another human being and be in relationship, which is a two-way thing. Otherwise, you're just in the service industry. I nearly said with great, physical talents, but I did have a word and I'm glad I didn't use it. But but that's when, because I can't say something serious without saying something funny afterwards. And that's also part of the masking. I've just said
Exactly.
something really vulnerable. I now have to be funny.
Yes.
But it's just knowing that about yourself, then I can do what I've just done, which is, and I'll correct the fact I just did that.
Mm. And you notice you do that, and that's what humor does. It's a survival strategy, especially when you've grown up in a environment as you did.
Yeah.
If you can make somebody laugh, it's a protection thing. It's a fight, flight, freeze thing. It's. But also, what I'm hearing you saying is that you're very good at giving, but you're not so good at receiving.
Oh, awful.
Yes. And that is what that's what
Yeah.
Peter, your father, is here to teach you about receiving that love from him.
He absolutely is, and he's doing an excellent job at it as well. It's just mad that just the text messages he sends, so just even yesterday I sent him a very kind of like a business related text message. Right, I'm coming on this day, da da da, remind me again what day you have dialysis, da 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 da. And then I wrote back, oh, looking forward to seeing you, kiss 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 kiss. And he just replied with, I love you. And I'm like,
Oh,
it's
can I receive that?
yeah, it's like that kind, and it's sort of like a shocking sort of thing, it's like, oh yes, and then of course I can write back, I love you too.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I can't give him anything. Like there's absolutely nothing I can give him apart from me being me, turning up and being me. That's it. There's literally nothing I can give him. He's not asking anything. There's nothing he wants. It's the healing around that, I think, is huge. And I do think you can do it on your own, but I think that it's I think your dad's role is to give you boundaries. I think your dad's role is that. I think your mother should be able to teach you that, but I think that dads have firmer boundaries than mothers do. You are not going out in that dress.
You're not seeing that boy.
You're not seeing that boy. You will have self-esteem, get that muck off your face,
Yeah.
but whatever that is, that you get, like, dads, tend to be very protective over their daughters and who their daughter dates. That teaches you to be very protective over yourself and who you date. If you don't have that, then how do you learn it? So then you put up with things that you wouldn't put up with because you're hungry, you're starving for the kind of love that you didn't get. So you throw yourself at people and then keep throwing yourself, even though they're stabbing you with tiny knives. Like, why?
And treating you like
all of these
dog
things.
poo.
Yes. And you're kind of going, oh, but if I love him harder, then he'll realize and then he'll change. No, it's because you haven't got any boundaries. You're allowing the dog poo.
Yes.
You know.
Talk about just I don't know, it just feels like that was, I believe that we have certain things happen in our life that set us up for experiences, a bit like me meeting Mark when I was 26. I really know in my heart that I pre-planned that, and it really feels like this was pre-planned for you too. Do you
Yeah.
feel that you've like?
Yeah. There were times throughout my childhood that I thought that someone was trying to find me. And I remember even saying to my mum, I think I come from aliens. I don't think I come from this family. I think that or I've been abducted, or I was taken as the wrong baby. And she'd be like, oh, don't be stupid. I didn't go through 17 hours of labor for this, and but I somehow I knew, and I actually think that feeling that something wasn't right or feeling something was missing actually was the driver that took me down to becoming a psychic, that made me hypervigilant, that made me research all of those things about trying to find hidden information, trying to read people. I think it all was because of this, and unknowingly so at the time, but that made me so vigilant of reading people and not feeling safe in the world, and because something just didn't feel right. And so my entire career path has been somehow influenced by this. Everything I've ever done has been influenced by this, even though I had no idea. And actually getting to that point where you kind of go, oh, now this makes sense as to who you are and why you are the way that you are. The question now is, what's next? What are you going to do with the new you? You know, so are you going to change your name? You know, you don't have to be Becky Walsh anymore. You can be Rebecca Alliston. Like, what are you going to do? Like, who is she? Who's trying to emerge? So I spent some time in Thailand with a notebook just trying to write who was trying to emerge. But who is emerging? She's not there yet. I can still feel her, but she's not there yet. But it's going to take some time. It could take a couple of years, but
Exciting. I mean, total magical new beginning, but also a rebirth for you. You
yeah,
know, a
massively
whole
so.
new chapter of life, a whole new chapter of discovering who you really are, and being supported while you do it by this amazing family.
Yeah, exactly that. And they are really supportive. My brother's wife gets on the phone to me almost weekly, and we're getting on so well. It's just lovely. And phone calls with my sister as well. Just it is. Sometimes I sort of, I kind of feel like sometimes I sit back in the phone call and just watch myself having a phone call. It sounds really weird. I'm like, no, I'm really listening, but I'm watching myself listen.
Yes, I'm observing myself and how I'm reacting to all of this.
Ah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. And look at me, aren't I doing really well here? I'm really,
Yes.
yeah, I really enjoy
Every
it.
so often, oh, look at me, I'm doing really well at doing really badly. That's also one of the things as well. I'm doing this badly really well. You know,
Yes.
it's like being happy about being unhappy. Like oh, look at me falling apart. Wow. Never let myself do that before. That's interesting. Yeah, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. And I think that's what comes of doing a lot of self-inquiry and some therapy and things like that, because, you know, to be able to observe, so many people go through life not being able to observe themselves, not realize it. They just get triggered and don't even look at why they're triggered.
No.
It's just,
Or
oh,
think it's the other person's fault.
yes, yes, your fault.
I'm
Yeah,
really angry with you. It's your fault. No, you're really angry with them. You need to look at that.
yes. What's going on with inside you? Why is that button just been pressed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, what a journey. Well, Becky, we could talk for hours and
We
hours.
could.
Let's do that again. Let's do this again, but that
Yeah.
feels like a really good like ending point there. So thank you
Oh,
so
thank
much
you for
for your time.
having me on. I know that when this first happened, you said, you know, did you want to talk about it? And I'm sure that you can see now why that you'd have probably not got a coherent sort of self. But thank you for having me on. You kind of, you know, this is obviously the first thing I've actually really done where I've talked about it.
Yeah.
Apart from to close friends and family. Not that you're not a close friend, but you know, in terms of putting it in a public arena. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and forever the teacher, sharing your vulnerable experience with everybody as a learning for everybody else. So again, just giving, just giving. So from my
I
heart
hope
to
that
your
never
heart.
dries up. That can
No,
stay.
exactly, exactly. All right, my darling, thank you so much. If
Thank you.
I was going to say if people want to contact you, but like it sounds like you're not wanting to be contacted right
No,
now.
that's fine. People can contact me. That's
Okay,
okay. I mean, the
how would
easiest
they?
is if you put Becky Walsh, and this is why I can't kind of change my name. My Google ranking's so good. If you put beckywalsh.com, I'll pop up, and usually the top of the Google search engine. So yeah, beckywalsh.com. So you know, feel free to drop me a line. That's no problem at all. Quite happy to do that. And I've got all my socials all out there, but I am so off my socials at the moment. They still all exist with years and years and years of content. So I'm just like, well, it's there.
Yes,
It's fine.
yes. And what are you offering? Are you working with clients? Are you
Yeah, still working
doing
with
gigs?
clients.
What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got two gigs coming up. One's in Weston-super-Mare, I think it's the 7th of September, which is Tossbag. And then November, can't remember the date, I'm going to be in Clevedon in Somerset area doing Burnout. I've got a retreat in the Isle of Man in October. I'm pretty sure that's sold out, and that's a burnout retreat in the Isle of Man.
Brilliant. Thank you
Good.
so much, Becky, and everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much, and feel free to share this video with anybody you feel was going to get benefit from what we've been talking about. So
Great. Thank you, Sharon.
brilliant.